All right, listeners, our sponsor is one of our favorite companies, Vanta, and we have something very new from them to share. Of course, you know Vanta enables companies to generate more revenue by getting their compliance certifications. That's SOC 2, ISO 27001. But the thing that we want to share now is Vanta has grown to become the best security compliance platform as you hit hypergrowth and scale into a larger enterprise.
It's kind of wild. When we first started working with Vanta and met Christina, my gosh, they had like a couple hundred customers, maybe. Now they've got 5,000, some of the largest companies out there. It's awesome.
Yeah, and they offer a tremendous amount of customization now for more complex security needs. So if you're a larger company and in the past you showed Vanta to your compliance department, you might have heard something like, oh, well, we've already got a compliance process in place and we can't integrate this new thing. But now, even if you already have a SOC 2, Vanta makes maintaining your compliance even more efficient and robust.
They launched Vendor Risk Management. This allows your company to quickly understand the security posture of the vendors that you're choosing in a standardized way that cuts down on security review times. This is great. And then on the customization front, they now also enable custom frameworks built around your controls and policies. Of course, that's in addition to the fact that with Vanta, you don't just become compliant once, you stay compliant with real-time data pulled from all of your systems, now all of your partner systems, and you get a trust report page to prove it to your customers. If you click the link in the show notes here or go to vanta.com/acquired, you can get a free trial. And if you decide you love it, you will also get $1,000 off when you become a paying customer. Make sure you go to vanta.com/acquired.
Who got the truth? Is it you? Is it you? Is it you? Who got the truth now? Is it you? Is it you? Is it you? Sit me down, say it straight. Another story on the way. Who got the truth?
Welcome to the first episode of Acquired. I'm Ben Gilbert.
I'm David Rosenthal.
And we're your hosts. We've recorded a pilot before this, but I'm not sure I'm comfortable letting that see the light of day. So this is our first real episode for the world to hear. We're going to start with a little background on ourselves. We'll talk about what the point of this podcast is, and then we'll get into the nuts and bolts of the first episode. So I guess I'll start. I'm Ben. I'm the co-founder of Pioneer Square Labs here in Seattle, where we come up with companies and start them, prototype them, see if they work, and spin them out.
I'm David. I'm a principal here at Madrona Venture Group. We're an early stage venture capital firm in Seattle. We invest in technology startups that hopefully one day go on to be an acquirer or be an acquiree. Yeah.
So it's funny. This podcast was something David and I were thinking up while we were out drinking, and
as all good podcasts start.
And we kind of came to the conclusion of like, all right, let's try and make a list of companies that have been acquired where it was actually beneficial for the acquirer. And I think that there's so many examples of the opposite of like, boy, that was a huge write-down. That was embarrassing. Or, my God, that was an interesting valuation for someone that had no revenue. We'll see if it ever pans out. And I think that it's worth going back and highlighting really interesting tech companies that were acquired and ended up being kind of a 1 + 1 = 3 situation where it was actually a good investment in the future.
Agree. And also interesting, perhaps, what could companies operating either as startups or independently take from why or why not those companies worked. With that, should we hop into our first episode?
I think we should. So the company that we have chosen as the acquiree is Pixar. And the company that obviously acquired Pixar was Disney in 2006. And this isn't a typical, straight, obvious technology acquisition. There's a lot more to this. The storytelling aspect and the entertainment media production. It's really not a straight tech company when you look at it. And I think that's kind of what's going to make this a really interesting first episode.
Totally. And Ben and I were chatting about this before we started recording. All of that is true. And yet, I think you could view Pixar as like the first example of software eating the world. So we'll get more into it. So we're going to break this episode and potentially all future episodes into a couple sections. So first, we're going to talk about the acquisition history and the facts. Then Ben and I are each going to put the acquisition into a category. What do we think was kind of the key piece of it, and why the rationale behind why the acquiring company purchased this acquisition target. Then we're going to talk about what might have happened had history been different. What if this acquisition hadn't gone through? And finally, we're going to assign each acquisition a grade. So let's start with the history and the facts. So January 2006, Pixar is a publicly traded company. Disney announces that they are acquiring it for $7.4 billion, estimated roughly 45 times estimated Pixar earnings for that year. Disney and obviously Pixar changed forever since.
And famously, that is the day that Steve Jobs became the largest single shareholder of Disney stock, which Laurene Powell Jobs still holds as part of the estate.
Led to a long relationship between Disney content and Apple technology products.
Yeah, super interesting. That's probably outside the bounds of this episode, but one thing we were planning for this episode we didn't even think about is kind of ancillary benefits there of cooperation between Apple and Disney, and revenue it created for both companies.
Totally. And so as we were researching kind of the background and history here, one stat that jumped out to me that I thought was just so cool, especially since we're focusing on technology acquisitions in this podcast. Pixar IPO'd in 1995. You know what else IPO'd in 1995? Netscape. Which do you think was the bigger IPO?
Well, you're positing the question, so I'm going to go Netscape.
You would be wrong.
Really?
Pixar was the largest IPO of 1995. Bigger than Netscape.
Wow. That's not one that the history books often refer to.
And I think if my memory's right, also ended up being the larger acquisition than Netscape. Pixar being $7.4 billion, and I think Netscape was, I could be wrong here, but around $3 billion-ish.
Is that to AOL?
I think so.
In the future, when there's actually people that listen to this podcast, we could totally have a chat room and they could be correcting us in real time. This could be great. But since David and I are both holding microphones and I haven't ordered stands yet, we'll leave the Googling to our fair readers.
But I thought that was just totally cool, right? Like, here's this technology company being bought by a media company, much like Netscape was bought by AOL, which was then merged with Time Warner. And here is this technology company that ends up being both the largest IPO in this banner year and one of the most important acquisitions of all time. After the acquisition in 2006, Disney Pixar, as it was rebranded, has since then released several films. I believe, let's see, the list is Cars later in 2006, Ratatouille, WALL-E, Up, Toy Story 3, Cars 2, Brave, Monsters University, and Inside Out. Just going on box office stats alone, so if you take worldwide box office for those films and subtract out production budgets for those films, now that's not the total story on profits. You know, of course, there is both on the revenue side, additional revenue from merchandise, from DVD sales, from streaming, and especially as part of Disney
theme parks.
And then there's additional costs, both in the COGS for those items, but also in marketing costs, both for the film and otherwise. But just going with the numbers that we have publicly available, those films, since the acquisition, have made just about $7.5 billion in revenue and about $4.5 billion of profit. So 10 years later, here we are, $4.5 billion of profit. Based on a $7.4 billion acquisition price.
It's kind of interesting. I mean, there's tons and tons of other ancillary benefits aside, but we could have a 15. The pace of their profits per film is accelerating, so we could have a 15-year payback period on the acquisition. And I think we'll kind of get into this a little bit more, but just kind of looking at the spot that Disney was in, the spot that Pixar was in. if you could go to Disney exec at the time and say, it's going to be 15 years before you really start seeing profits on top of this acquisition, but look at what Disney has been historically, the powerhouse of incredible animation and sort of the source of magic for children and adults alike, and kind of what happened to that since Toy Story 1. I mean, Pixar had the monopoly on magic and for creating the most successful, incredible films in animation. And I think that, is Disney sort of reacquiring its roots. And to me, that the 15-year price tag for that isn't too bad.
Totally. And I think this is a great seg into the next section of our episode, which is, how would you categorize this acquisition? And some of the categories that we'd identified are, is this about people? Is this about technology? Is this a product that the acquirer is buying, a business line, or is it something else?
Yeah. It's funny. There's certainly a people element, but it's not like they were repurposing these people on something. I think in a people acquisition, you typically talk about, they wanted the really smart people to go to work on existing products with existing customers. That's certainly not the case, except with one specific person we can call out, and probably other people we don't know about in the organization. Technology, there's something there, but Pixar started by it being a pure technology company and not having any animated films out there. They were just producing the Pixar computer with RenderMan software on it, so the ability for Lucasfilm and then for others to do 3D animation. And that's
and I think this is, before we render judgment on what category we'd put this acquisition into, I think that's a really important point that it's worth discussing. Like, Pixar is a technology company. And, it was created as a division within Lucasfilm. There's a long history, even going back prior to Lucasfilm, but it really came together as an organization there to solve problems, within Lucasfilm and be a technology enabler for George Lucas. And what's interesting is that, like a lot of technology companies, it was then spun out by Steve Jobs and sold by Lucasfilm to Steve Jobs. And like a lot of technology companies, it started really small with what it could do with computer animation. It made short films. It was trying to push its technology to other film companies.
Totally. And I mean, even before they were making short films, they were purely that RenderMan software on the Pixar animation computer. And to your point in starting small, like the ability for hardware to do this sort of thing at the time. If you go back and watch the Luxo Jr. or the Rotating Hand, any of the really old Pixar animation stuff, it's so limited, and you can totally see
even Toy Story.
Oh yeah,
incredibly
there's no
limited.
faces in Toy Story. There's no human faces because it was too sophisticated at the time. And
people
they just
talk
punted.
about big technology companies starting as toys. I mean, literally, Pixar didn't start with Toy Story, but their first big hit was toys.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the thing we're actually talking about is there, before the episode, is this just classic low-end disruption at play? I mean, they're the kind of famous story about John Lasseter is that he came to Pixar and to Ed Catmull with sort of this love for creating animation and not the technology of it, but the art of what kind of storytelling you could do with it. And I think I wrote this down. He was actually hired. Ed Catmull believed in him, but he wasn't allowed to hire animators. He was hired with the title of interface designer. And no one questioned Catmull's decision, but what John was doing was kind of on the side exploring the possibility of doing real storytelling in this incredibly limited medium.
Totally. And I think also, if I'm getting my history right, Lasseter started his career at Disney and was an incredibly passionate Disney employee. It's all he ever wanted to do was be an animator there. And he was fired because he was espousing this new technology, this computer animation, which people didn't believe would be capable of being part of the Disney way. It's
so interesting to think about, thinking about what we look at today that we laugh off as like, well, that'll never be good enough. That tech isn't, I mean, that's laughable. How could you ever take that rotating hand and rival the power of Beauty and the Beast with that? Actually, Beauty and the Beast, I don't think was out yet, but, Snow White or anything like that. Yep. And you can totally see how it just gets incrementally better. It gets better every time. And it's one of those things where you have to check yourself when you're thinking, well, that can't possibly be the future. Like, look at VR today. The screen door effect, the lag, the price tag, like everything about it, you're like, that is impossible. There's no way that ever reaches mass market. And then, like, you know, some of these things die on the vine, but really, if you're gonna win at some of these things, you get in early, and it's a matter of time, and you grow with the medium and with the technology.
And I think the other point, as I was thinking about this, and Pixar as a technology company, is even with the short films, but especially with Toy Story, they embraced the limitations of the medium, and yet delivered a full solution within it. You know, they didn't skimp on emotional connections within their movies, even when the technology was arguably inferior to both live action and traditional animation. They were able to deliver incredible emotional experiences. And I think those are just hallmarks of all technology companies that are operating in new spaces and at the bleeding edge.
It's cool to think about the things that they intentionally did because they would fit well into that medium. I mean, you look at it at Toy Story or Luxo Jr. I mean, these things were basic shapes. A ball where you could easily map a pattern onto it that's rolling and the lamp jumps on it. It's because it's so easy to render a sphere. And you look at Brave, I mean, it took them 25, 30 years to do something like Brave, where they had to do this fierce, incredible hair, or Cars, where they had, you know, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of vehicles flying around in the background and all this crazy stuff. They knew that, or maybe John knew, the team that was there early knew that the important thing was really communicating that story and picking whatever kind of visual representation they needed to fit the medium to still deliver that complete solution, as you put it.
Yep. So that would argue that the technology, clearly a critical part of Pixar.
Critical, but you know, that Pixar was kicking the crap out of DreamWorks. I think that the computer animation hadn't become commoditized per se, but they weren't the only ones with it.
Yep. So in terms of categorizing this acquisition, so I think, you know, for me, as I was thinking about this, I would actually characterize Pixar best as a business line acquisition for Disney. And the reason I say that is twofold. One, it's interesting what Disney did with Pixar, and looking at that almost as a blueprint with things like what Facebook's done with Instagram and with WhatsApp and with Oculus. They kept it completely separate. And this was, for the most part, driven by the Pixar side of the house. But the studios are in separate locations. Disney Animation is in Southern California. Pixar's in Northern California in the Bay Area. The teams are completely separate. There is no cross-pollination on projects.
With the exception of leadership. With the
exception of the leadership, yes, which we can get to in a second. But really, Pixar has remained its own brand and its own business line, quote unquote, today. So that's reason one. Reason number two is, as I was reading about the acquisition, there's this great story I read that supposedly is true, that Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney, realized, the new CEO of Disney, when the company acquired Pixar, realized that he needed to buy Pixar, with which they had a film distribution deal in the past, when he was looking at a parade at a Disney theme park and all the characters in the parade, and he realized that the characters that were developed in the past 10 years, none of them were Disney characters. All or almost all of them were Pixar characters. And that's when he realized Pixar needs to be an official, wholly owned part of Disney.
Yeah. It is interesting to think about. The thing that made Pixar special is this really incredible studio thing that they had going that no one else had in the ability to produce movies. And it wasn't, you know, when they talk about the big studios, there's hits and misses. There's big blockbuster hits that they put lots and lots of money into, and they just miss. And the things that Pixar has put out, you know, with the exception of Cars 2, which is not necessarily critically acclaimed, like every single one is a box office hit.
Yeah.
And nothing Pixar does sees the light of day unless it's wonderful. I mean, there's this emotional connection for kids and adults alike, and it's something where, you know, they have this really intense internal process where I think 3 or 4 directors over the course of their history have been fired in the middle of projects. They have this really incredible review of the kind of Pixar brain trust sitting around reviewing milestones and watching early screenings. They have talent development where if there's a young promising director coming up, they do a short first and they kind of prove themselves in the super signature shorts that Pixar does. And it's this process where, when you think that, I don't know if it's Christensen or there's a very business school theory of the fact that what a business really is people, processes, and priorities. And that was very, very clear at Pixar. And I think that the processes and the priorities had just as much to do with the acquisition as the people did in this case.
Absolutely. And then John Lasseter and Ed Catmull, the principals at Pixar, aside from Steve Jobs, went on to assume control of all of animation within Disney.
Yeah, and you look at, what Disney needed to learn to do was not ship crap. Truly, only put out really wonderful films. And, they're not to a Pixar level yet. When things have Pixar's name on it, it's a different level of quality. But,
yep.
Frozen wasn't Pixar. That was Disney. That was Disney learning from Lasseter, Pixar,
Yep.
the process that they had there and what, computer animated joy looked like.
And how we won't name names here. Well, I'm not even going to go to being in Seattle, but how much does that sound like technology companies, right? Don't ship crap.
Yeah.
And when technology companies go wrong, let's use Apple as, a non-controversial example. There were a number of years in the wilderness when Apple was shipping crap.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'm sure we'll have many more episodes about Apple, but obviously the Steve Jobs thread runs deep in both of these companies.
Yep. So, Ben, category for you.
Oh, it's a business line. It's processes, but it's a business line. They're, this is not something that they're kind of co-marketing to the same customer segment. This is not a thing where they're having the Pixar people at large work on Disney products. This is something where they have incredible respect for the existing Pixar business and they're keeping it separate.
This is a great time to tell you about one of our very favorite companies, Crusoe.
So Crusoe, as listeners know by now, is a clean compute cloud provider specifically built for AI workloads. NVIDIA is one of their major partners, and literally Crusoe's data centers are nothing but racks and racks of A100s and H100s. And because Crusoe's cloud is purpose-built for AI and run on wasted, stranded, or clean energy, they can provide significantly better performance per dollar than traditional cloud providers.
Yes, we talked about that on our ACQ2 episode with Crusoe CEO Chase Lockmiller.
The other element that makes Crusoe special is the environmental angle. Crusoe, of course, locates their data centers at stranded energy sites. So think oil flares, wind farms that can't use all the energy they generate, etc., and uses that power that would otherwise be wasted to run your AI workloads instead.
Yep. Obviously, it's a huge benefit for the environment and for customers on costs since Crusoe doesn't rely on the energy grid. Energy is the second largest cost of running AI after, of course, the price you pay NVIDIA for the chips. And these lower energy costs get passed on to customers.
It's super cool that they can put their data centers out there in these remote locations where, quote unquote, energy happens, as opposed to the other hyperscalers such as AWS and Google and Azure, who need to build their data centers close to major traffic hubs where the internet happens because they are doing everything in their clouds.
Yep. If you, your company, or your portfolio companies would like to use the lower cost and more performant infrastructure for your AI workloads, go to crusoecloud.com/acquired. That's CRUSOE cloud.com/acquired, or click the link in the show notes.
All right, let's move on to, I think, a very interesting segment of our show, which is what would have happened otherwise? Let's say Disney didn't buy Pixar. Where would we be standing today? Or where would they be standing today?
Well,
We'd probably still be right here in Seattle.
I wouldn't be worried about Pixar, but I would be worried about Disney. I think that Pixar probably wouldn't have grown like it has, having distribution into Disney's theme parks and a much more significant marketing budget behind it. But they had a passionate following, and there was no small following. They were grossing over $100 million each film.
Well over $100 million.
Yeah, actually, I think we just looked it up.
$400 million.
And Inside Out, most recent, was profit or gross. Inside Out had revenues at, I think, $800 million.
Yeah, so Inside Out, which is, I believe, still in theaters.
Some theaters, yeah.
I tried to watch it this weekend on my Apple TV, and I couldn't. So it's not on streaming
it's in that
yet.
weird... That is a weird period. So there's like this time where no one's allowed to watch it on anything.
Total aside here. X number of years from now, with X being like well less than 10,
we're going to laugh at that.
That is going to be ridiculous. Like, I was talking with my wife about this the other day, and I was like, when we don't have kids yet, but someday, hopefully we'll have kids, and, they'll become culturally aware at some point, hopefully. And, one day Jenny and I are going to be talking about television, and our kids are going to look at us and say, "What's television?"
Yeah.
Total aside there.
Wild.
So Inside Out, which is still not, run its course, has grossed in worldwide box office over $800 million, had a $175 million production budget, so over $600 million in profit.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, so there's Disney magic there that.
Yep.
We can't say that's all Pixar, but really, I think Disney was a little bit lost. Had a new CEO who had a clear vision, and I think that I'd be a lot more worried about Disney than Pixar.
So what I'd say about this, two things. I think on the Pixar side, this really is a good example of, the actually working in practice the rationale that a lot of leadership teams of acquired companies will say, which often sounds hollow, which is that going with the acquirer will give you the scale to have an impact at the level much faster and much bigger at a level that you couldn't do standalone.
That's in so many blog posts.
Totally, right? But here I think it's really worked. Cars Land. Cars, I don't know if Ben, if you've been to Disneyland recently. I've been twice, I think, in the past couple of years. All you guys out there, if you haven't been to Cars Land at Disneyland in LA, you got to go. It's amazing.
I'm booking tickets.
And Disney spent $1 billion, over $1 billion, creating Cars Land. None of that would have happened if Pixar weren't part of Disney. So that's that side. And then I think on the Disney side, what's super interesting is that this kicked off really not just a transformation of Disney animation, but a whole transformation of how they thought about their IP and their entire film business. So since Pixar in 2006, they then acquired Marvel in 2009. And you only need look at, the Avengers and Iron Man and Thor and Captain America and all of those movies and arguably superhero fad that we've been in recently, but they've made a ton of money from that. But then Lucasfilm a couple of years ago, and I don't know about you, Ben, but I am quite excited about this December.
Did you buy your tickets yet?
I've not bought my tickets yet.
It's interesting. They really have put together a playbook for how to take a hugely successful franchise with a big following and people that grew up on something and just has a special place in people's hearts and really just turn it into a machine. I mean, you look at the amount of Star Wars. I mean, there's obviously 7, 8, and 9, but there's other films that are coming out. There's new video. I mean, they've totally reinvigorated the franchise and taken the love of that fan base and turned it into something that, is it's a uniquely Disney asset is their ability to amplify a franchise.
Yeah.
And what they've done with both Marvel and Star Wars, I think that Disney learned a lot from buying Pixar.
And I don't know how not safe for work we want to make these podcasts, but not.
I think we can't swear, otherwise we will get the iTunes explicit tag. But other than that,
well, not F-bombing up the creative process in the process of doing this. And I think that's something. Would that have happened without Pixar, right? Like, Marvel fans, I'm sure there are plenty out there who would argue that it's become too commercial and it's lost the whatever. But that would be a small minority. I mean, the Marvel comic book franchises now and movies are at such a better point, I would argue, than they were before the acquisition. And we'll see what happens with Star Wars this December. But like, what if Disney hadn't acquired Pixar, hadn't gone through that experience? Would they be equipped to digest Marvel and Lucasfilm in the same ways?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's not an asset that Pixar had, but Disney trains institutional muscle in learning how to do that successfully. And that's, that's how you get these sort of 1 + 1 = 3 things, where it wasn't an asset that either company had, but the process of the acquisition itself forced them to get good at a thing that would determine their future success.
All right. I feel like it's time we should wrap up. Overall grade, we're going with A through F here. Disney, Pixar. What's your verdict?
Well, David, we had our choice of picking any single acquisition in history of technology to do this. So, I'm like looking for reasons not to give it an A, but there's kind of a reason we picked it for our first episode. So, thank you for the softball. I'm going to go with A.
I'm going to disagree a little bit.
Uh-oh.
So, and I think this illustrates just how hard M&A is overall. It's been 10 years since Disney acquired Pixar. Of course, for all those reasons that we were just talking about. Incredibly successful, has transformed Disney in many ways. No brainer that this was a great acquisition by Disney. On the other hand, you look at this financially, they spent $7.5 billion for it. Now, they've probably, when you account for everything, which only the internal teams in Disney can, and even then probably not fully, they've probably made that back, but it's been 10 years. So financially, and I contrast that with in 2006, Facebook was 2 years old at that point. And now, what's Facebook's market cap? I don't know.
Whoa. So every acquisition is unsuccessful because it does not match the growth of one of the greatest technology companies of all time?
Yes.
Let's track the public markets as a... I'm
self-justifying myself here why I'm more excited about being a venture investor than I am about being working for M&A teams in public companies. Nothing wrong with working at M&A teams in public companies. So I guess where I'm going is I would hope that to get an A, something would have to be just such a grand slam on all levels that everybody can retire and be career making. And what's interesting is that even this, we picked it as the first acquisition of our show, it's hard to get much better than this on all levels. And yet it's not totally clear that this has just turned into an incredible, cash flow decision, as opposed to a, investment in Facebook in 2006.
You give it a grade, and then I'll make a point.
I'm going to give it a B+.
Oh,
maybe A-.
We have pluses and minuses, guys.
B+/A-.
The thing that I think you're not taking into account, and I'll acknowledge my own bias here of being just absolutely enamored with Pixar. Toy Story defining my childhood. That was my AOL screen name was BJ Lightyear.
Going deep here.
Yeah. Pixar has a very, very deep place in my heart. All that said, I think the thing that is not factored into the financial decision is, and actually we don't really ever know what it would look like otherwise, but the long-term success and health of Disney. What would that look like without Pixar? What does Disney look like 20 years from now without Pixar?
Well, and here's a question which we answered in the what would have happened otherwise. But is there a Pixar land? if
Yeah.
there's not Disney Pixar.
Get Catmull on the phone.
All right, with that, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Have a good night, guys.
Who got the truth? Is it you? Is it you? Is it you? Who got the truth now? Huh?
All right, listeners, we have a longtime favorite acquired company to tell you about, Modern Treasury. Modern Treasury is the software platform that turns money movement operations into code.
Yeah, for years now, services like Stripe, Adyen, and Square have enabled developers to accept credit card payments in apps. But that's only the tip of the iceberg of what a business needs to fully handle the movement of money in and out of their company. Those payment actions from Stripe and Adyen, et cetera, flowed through to ledger systems and then reconciliations, compliance verifications, and that's before any cash actually moves between institutions, which of course involves banking operations.
Yes, their APIs, of course, work with Plaid, Stripe, Intuit, etc., but also with their incredible banking partner network with over 30 banks, meaning that for the first time, you literally can turn your banking operations at any of those institutions into software. This means faster payments, easy adoptions of new payment rails when they come out, like FedNow. It means automatic reconciliation and real-time financial data. This lets you move money at the speed of software, which, as we now know after the first half of 2023, being able to move money fast is very important.
Yes, we love Modern Treasury so much. The founders and really the whole team have become close friends of Ben and mine, really back to when they first got started. And this is a very cool full circle moment that just happened. We just emceed their first big conference here in San Francisco, Transfer, which happened at the beginning of June.
Yes, if your business involves money movement, be it a marketplace, fintech platform, real estate, lending, investing, or anyone who reconciles or moves money, go on over to moderntreasury.com/acquired and make sure that when you get in touch, you tell them that Ben and David sent you. All right, listeners, our sponsor is one of our favorite companies, Vanta, and we have something very new from them to share. Of course, you know Vanta enables companies to generate more revenue by getting their compliance certifications. That's SOC 2, ISO 27001. But the thing that we want to share now is Vanta has grown to become the best security compliance platform as you hit hypergrowth and scale into a larger enterprise.
It's kind of wild. When we first started working with Vanta and met Christina, my gosh, they had like a couple hundred customers, maybe. Now they've got 5,000, some of the largest companies out there. It's awesome.
Yeah, and they offer a tremendous amount of customization now for more complex security needs. So if you're a larger company and in the past you showed Vanta to your compliance department, you might have heard something like, oh, well, we've already got a compliance process in place and we can't integrate this new thing. But now, even if you already have a SOC 2, Vanta makes maintaining your compliance even more efficient and robust.
They launched Vendor Risk Management. This allows your company to quickly understand the security posture of the vendors that you're choosing in a standardized way that cuts down on security review times. This is great. And then on the customization front, they now also enable custom frameworks built around your controls and policies. Of course, that's in addition to the fact that with Vanta, you don't just become compliant once, you stay compliant with real-time data pulled from all of your systems, now all of your partner systems, and you get a trust report page to prove it to your customers. If you click the link in the show notes here or go to vanta.com/acquired, you can get a free trial. And if you decide you love it, you will also get $1,000 off when you become a paying customer. Make sure you go to vanta.com/acquired.
Who got the truth? Is it you? Is it you? Is it you? Who got the truth now? Is it you? Is it you? Is it you? Sit me down, say it straight. Another story on the way. Who got the truth?
Welcome back to episode 2 of Acquired. I'm Ben Gilbert,
I'm David Rosenthal.
and we are your hosts yet again, at least for the second time, and hopefully many, many more.
Hopefully many more. Thank you to all of our listeners, all few of you, for the amazing, few but growing, small in number, strong in spirit.
True.
Thank you for the amazing feedback. It was incredible. We learned a lot. We learned that Ben has amazing idioms.
Amazing names. David has dulcet tones.
Thank you for the feedback. We will try to incorporate it, and hope that we keep getting better. If you have more feedback after this one, please send it to us. You can find the show on Twitter at @AcquiredFM. You can find Ben at
Gilbert.
You can find me, David, at DJ Rosent, DJROSENT. And our website is live at acquired.fm.
So, should we introduce ourselves again? What do you think for the first couple, so more than our original 5 listeners get the lowdown?
I think we can do it just this once.
Then once we're viral after episode 3, then we can stop introducing ourselves. Yeah.
Sounds right.
So I'm Ben Gilbert. I am the co-founder of Pioneer Square Labs here in Seattle. We come up with ideas for companies. We prototype them, we build them, we try and get customers, and if it seems to be working, then we recruit really talented people to come in and take the company from us, and we go start the next thing.
And I'm David. I am a principal at Madrona Venture Group. We are an early stage venture capital firm located here in Seattle. Invest in seed, Series A, Series B stage technology companies. Always looking for the next great thing, which might become the next great acquirer or maybe acquiree. Hence our podcast.
All right. So with that, let's segue into our second episode. Our first was Disney acquiring Pixar. And here for our second, as another landmark, successful, even in the very recent last couple of years, this one's not nearly as old. Landmark successful acquisition, Instagram by Facebook.
Facebook buying Instagram. So as a quick reminder, the framework that we've decided on for our show is we're going to briefly talk about the acquisition, kind of facts and history. Then each of us, Ben and I, are going to categorize the acquisition into a few buckets that we've identified. And then we're going to do a fun segment called What Would Have Happened Had the Acquisition Not Happened.
Trust us, it's fun.
And then we're adding a new one for this episode, which is tech themes that we think are illustrated by this acquisition. And then finally we're going to give the deal as a whole a grade. And we heard the feedback that Ben and I agree too much, so we're going to try and be more controversial here.
I'm not, though.
Yes, you are. Yeah. All right. Instagram. So, I remember vividly, this was one of those moments in my technology life, at least, exactly where I was the day I found out that Facebook bought Instagram for $1 billion. And today, sitting here in 2015, where there are like 623 unicorn startups out there that are valued at, more than $1 billion. Back in April 2012, there were very, very few. And the even idea that a company that had 13 employees and no revenue and made an app on your phone could be worth $1 billion was pretty shocking at the time.
And totally shocking because there was no, discussion of it being worth $1 billion pre-acquisition. The only indicator that number was ever talked about was when the deal was done and announced to the public.
Yep. And interestingly, Instagram raised its, I believe, Series B round of venture capital just like a week or even less than a week before the acquisition happened, and did value it at several $100 million. But all that only came out just right before or even during and after the acquisition news, which was pretty momentous. Really ushered in. Ben and I have been talking about this for this acquisition for months. It was part of the genesis of the idea of this show. This acquisition, I think, really ushered in, quote unquote, the age of the unicorn.
Yeah. As much as I hate the term, it sure does seem that way.
So, quick facts. April 2012, Facebook announces that they are buying Instagram, company with 13 employees, no revenue, no obvious monetization model, and had 30 million users at the time. And interestingly, just a week before, Instagram had launched their Android app and added 1 million users. At that time, With 13 employees and 30 million users, Instagram had 2.3 million users per employee at acquisition. Pop quiz. How many users per employee do you think Instagram has today?
Well, they've hired a whole bunch of people, right?
They
they've
have.
hired.
They have.
I think what were we talking about earlier? They have like 150 employees now.
They have about 150 employees, as best as we can tell.
I don't know. That number's got to be significantly worse now.
It's better. 2.6 million users per employee. Instagram now has 2.5 years later, 400 million users.
Wow. Huh. Okay. So I don't know. I feel like I'm already hinting at my answer to the question later of my rendered conclusion, but this is our second episode. We're still getting to the easy ones here. Pretty incredible, honestly. I think the thing that always amazed me about Instagram was it's so simple. They focus their eyes on the prize, and the question is like, we'll get to this a little bit later, but what would have happened to that incredible, simple, sheltered platform if it wasn't integrated into the Facebook strategy and they were forced to start clawing and scratching for more of that attention that keeps people tied to Facebook? Because I think the interesting thing that Facebook realized is they're the social fabric. They're necessary. And it was getting to the point, everyone's parents were on Facebook. It became more of a utility in our lives than sort of an escape or an enjoyable thing. And actually, a quick aside, it's crazy. I was scrolling back through my history of writing on a friend's wall, and this is freshman year of college. And our conversation back and forth on each other's like public Facebook walls look like text messages, and they're talking about what grades we got in classes and like sort of private stuff that I wouldn't be posting today. It's really fascinating that Facebook was very much that sort of fun place at that point, and not this thing that we viewed as kind of necessary and a thing that it could be assumed that pretty much every person would have. And, you see there's a lot of reports of, hey, kids aren't using Facebook. They're just using Instagram. They're just using Snapchat. They're all using Facebook too, but it's for schoolwork. I mean, it's for the necessary, less fun things in their lives. And, starting with Instagram and with other acquisitions later, I mean, Instagram is sort of where you want to hang out, and Facebook is where you have to go. Yep.
And, Facebook, it's so easy to forget now sitting here in 2015, and maybe if we're looking for something funny in 2018, we'll go back and listen to our podcast that we're recording now. But it's even so hard to remember. Like, this was only 3.5 years ago when this acquisition happened, and Facebook was in such a different place from where it is today. The company had just recently gone public. Ben and I were just talking about this right before the episode. They were still in the whole HTML5 mobile app hell. Their apps were buggy.
God, can you remember when that was even a debate?
Oh, nightmare. And right in now, what is half of Facebook's revenue, if not more? We should make a note too that we haven't fact checked most of our numbers, so we could be wrong here. But at least it seems like everything that people talk about with Facebook is their mobile app installs and their CPI ads. Like, couldn't even do that with HTML5. Remember back, people talk about now, and I think Mark Zuckerberg has even said, that Facebook really made a huge misstep in mobile, and apps like Instagram, like WhatsApp that they would later acquire, like Messenger that they would build within Facebook in the coming years, really stepped in and took over a lot of the value that people were getting out of Facebook from back in the day, the fun.
And it's amazing because Facebook, really, really killed it on the desktop. There's a lot of different boxes everywhere. If you remember, there was the mini feed, and then there was the wall, and then there was apps that you could have installed. And
Super Poke.
Each one, Super Poke. God, do I miss Super Poke. There's these boxes that are sort of floating around all over the place, maximizing your screen real estate. And when they try to translate that to a mobile experience, it's tough to pare down all that stuff when your app has all this incredible functionality. Whereas you have Instagram, which is born in the mobile era, And I can have a funny story about this. It's born in the mobile era and has these immersive, beautiful, damn near full screen photographs. And all of my attention is on that one thing at one time. And it was focused on making anybody able to look like a talented creative. Even if we weren't. I mean, I specifically remember one of my early Instagrams was of like the torn up bottom of my jeans and my shoe. And it looked so artsy with a filter. And it was a place where you could show off.
That's so emo.
In full screen. and really like, what they did was understand what people's attention span and what people's intention looked like when they were on that platform. And I remember this is not a thing that I came close to understanding at the time, because I remember I used to work at a Dogpatch Labs at Pier 38. May it rest in peace. Has recently been demolished.
When you're interning at CoTweet.
At CoTweet, yeah, in San Francisco. And
itself an acquisition.
Yeah.
An acquisition and then another acquisition.
Yeah. Everything becomes Salesforce eventually.
In the enterprise.
Yeah. Anyway, so I'm at Pier 38, and the guys from Bourbon, later Instagram, are upstairs working on a pivot from their kind of location-based thing to this very simple, filter-focused, upload your photos to a social network app. And I remember seeing a demo of it when I walked by one time and telling Kevin, I'm pretty sure Facebook already lets you upload photos from your phone, and everybody's already on that.
And that, Ben, is why you're not a venture capitalist.
Yeah, we'll leave that to David.
But no, I think, Ben, what you're saying, I think really illustrates, we're going to talk about themes, as part of our programming in a minute, but I think this really illustrates something critical about why Facebook needed Instagram, and that was engagement. Facebook before mobile, remember, back when it first launched when I was in college, and you were probably in high school when it first launched, right?
Yep.
How much engagement did you have with Facebook? It was, it's related to this concept of fun, right? And now Facebook has become this utility, and I barely engage with it at all. But Instagram and messaging, WhatsApp, and other services like that have become on mobile these atomized services where your engagement lies, and that's the core of driving advertising revenue.
And Facebook has always been really good at this strategy, where social networking is a cool kids game. I mean, there's the cool kids go to a thing, and then the late adopters come on, and then parents come on, and then it's boring, and then it's built for the old world platform, and then it atrophies and it dies. And what Facebook did when in acquiring Instagram is set their hubris aside and say, we're not the most important platform. The most important thing is our business staying alive. And what we have to do is bet on whatever the thing where the people are on the new platform is. And, after that critical first step, then they can start learning about what makes that so successful and kind of integrate all of those really talented folks to kind of like teach Facebook how to do that too.
So that brings us to section number 2 of our show. What category would you put this acquisition in? People, technology, product, business line, other?
It's funny. I was just talking about people, but that's totally second order here. I'm going to say this is product. The Facebook left it alone. I mean, Facebook did the thing that every other acquirer can't seem to resist in any scenario, and that is saying, oh, you know what this could do? This could make our main product better. And the reason that product was dangerous to you and potentially kicking your ass was because they figured something out you didn't. And it's been really incredible to watch Instagram have its own evolution. And, albeit with some little boosts and from the Facebook news feed and things like that, doing some algorithmic priority. But it's really remained a separate team, and stayed very true to the core of what they set out to do.
I think everything you said is right. And totally the natural category to put this in is products, but I'm going to be a little bit controversial. I'm actually going to say technology here. And the reason I'm going to say technology is not because of any specific great computer science-based innovation that the Instagram team had. But I'm going to say that this became, as I was talking about, really the first the first piece of Facebook's entire strategy for the mobile technology wave that they missed from the beginning. And
wait, David, you think that you think that they wouldn't have gotten their act together in making their app what it is today without, I mean, let's look at what their app is today. It's a collection of the most talented iOS developers in the world and a lot of the best mobile designers in the world packed into one office developing maybe arguably the best suite of apps in the world.
You just said the critical thing. Suite of apps. What is
I
Facebook
mean,
today? Facebook is a
Messenger
suite
and
of
Paper
apps
and-
company.
I'm not going to disagree with you there.
I think without Instagram, and it's impossible to know how much of this is Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg and the rest of the core Facebook team strategy versus what's come from Kevin and Mike and the rest of the Instagram team. But I think without that acquisition happening, I think Facebook probably doesn't or make an offer for Snapchat somewhat a few months or a short time after to buy Snapchat for $3 billion that Snapchat rejected. I think Facebook doesn't buy WhatsApp for the incredible amount of money that it did. And maybe even Oculus to a certain extent. But even more than that, again, think back to April 2012 when Facebook on mobile is this HTML5 mess. And think about Messenger now. To go from that HTML5 mess to the core Facebook app today, which drives a huge amount of revenue through their paid install ad program, and then to develop Messenger on the side and then have the guts to rip it out and make it part of this suite of apps strategy. Messenger, I believe the latest numbers has 700 million active users, which is pretty incredible for something that is now a fully standalone app.
Yeah, so I'll go with you on the technology of Instagram being a kick in the pants. But I don't think, we talk about like what a technology acquisition that is truly about, they understood how to do this computationally difficult thing better than we did, and we needed it to enhance our core product. Or, Apple acquiring the Touch ID company because they could make a differentiated product based on integrating that technology. I think that's a far second order thing here to acquiring the product of Instagram.
You might be right.
You'll get me later.
I'll get you later.
This is a great time to tell you about one of our very favorite companies, Crusoe.
So Crusoe, as listeners know by now, is a clean compute cloud provider specifically built for AI workloads. NVIDIA is one of their major partners, and literally Crusoe's data centers are nothing but racks and racks of A100s and H100s. And because Crusoe's cloud is purpose-built for AI and run on wasted, stranded, or clean energy, they can provide significantly better performance per dollar than traditional cloud providers.
Yes, we talked about that on our ACQ2 episode with Crusoe CEO Chase Lockmiller.
The other element that makes Crusoe special is the environmental angle. Crusoe, of course, locates their data centers at stranded energy sites. So think oil flares, wind farms that can't use all the energy they generate, etc., and uses that power that would otherwise be wasted to run your AI workloads instead.
Yep. Obviously, it's a huge benefit for the environment and for customers on costs since Crusoe doesn't rely on the energy grid. Energy is the second largest cost of running AI after, of course, the price you pay NVIDIA for the chips. And these lower energy costs get passed on to customers.
It's super cool that they can put their data centers out there in these remote locations where, quote unquote, energy happens, as opposed to the other hyperscalers such as AWS and Google and Azure, who need to build their data centers close to major traffic hubs where the internet happens because they are doing everything in their clouds.
Yep. If you, your company, or your portfolio companies would like to use the lower cost and more performant infrastructure for your AI workloads, go to crusoecloud.com/acquired. That's CRUSOE cloud.com/acquired, or click the link in the show notes.
All right. What would have happened if Kevin Systrom had said no?
Yeah.
Instagram had just raised $50 million They have plenty of runway, bright future ahead of them. Where would we be today?
Yeah. I think Instagram as a product to users wouldn't be significantly different. I think that it would have continued to grow more slowly because they didn't have the resources. They wouldn't have had the prioritization from, and this is theoretical. This is something we talked about before. Did Facebook really prioritize Instagram post in the newsfeed algorithm? Probably. I mean, it sure looked like it. It looked like we had a huge spike in that, and there was probably a lot more Instagram traffic.
On the other hand, one of the things I'm still bummed about today as
Twitter,
a loyal Twitter user.
Oof.
Oh man, how great was it when Instagram was natively integrated into the Twitter stream?
Yeah, that was pretty cool. And that was a sad day when that integration broke.
Totally sad.
And actually, it changed my behavior. Like, I don't tweet photos on, like, I don't put a photo on Instagram and then tweet it because I know it's not going to show up. I natively upload it to Twitter now.
Yep. And how often do you do that?
Every third, fourth tweet.
Maybe. Yeah. Maybe.
But I was going to say, oh, these things negate each other. Twitter's at 300 million users and churning out everyone they can bring in. Churned out 1 billion plus so far. And Facebook's sitting pretty with, a decent chunk of the world's internet enabled population. Yep. So I think anything Facebook does is, a 3, 4x, maybe 5x force multiplier on top of anything Twitter could do.
No doubt. However, I do think, Instagram has become itself a huge driver of audience. And
400 million active users.
400 million active users, added 100 million this year. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But I think I think you can make an argument that they could have continued bootstrapping their way up into that user base through other platforms like Twitter, and using Facebook as well.
Yeah. I mean, here's how I think it would be different. I think, in the last 6 months, especially, Instagram has a very real ad platform. And they took their time in developing it. First, a very full serve one where you had to work directly with the Instagram team, now a self-serve dashboard. But you get these really immersive brand ads that are platform appropriate. They don't feel like something that I want to scroll past. I want to look at it almost as much as I want to look at the gorgeous nature photography that I see. They just didn't have the funnel of advertisers to point the ad platform at. So it would have been very slow to try and get advertiser attention and people to come over and use the Instagram platform and not only to spend their dollars there, but to spend their attention there learning a new platform. Whereas in the Facebook acquisition, they have this kind of dual deployment where you can buy ads on either from a single ad dashboard, much like Google did very early on with YouTube.
Yep. So I'm going to go in a little bit kind of out there crazy direction with this. And this is pure speculation. But I think if this acquisition hadn't happened, like I was talking about earlier, this kicked off the era of the constellation of apps, with Facebook and with, Twitter buying Vine. And gosh, even Instagram itself now between, Boomerang that they just launched and Hyperlapse.
And, Layout.
Yep.
Which kudos to the Instagram design team. The cohesiveness of those is really nice.
So let's imagine though for a second that this constellation of apps thing hasn't become a theme in the technology landscape over the past couple of years. What's really interesting because it has, you now have all of these major social platforms that have been created over the past 5 years, with the exception of Snapchat. All of the U.S. new domestic U.S. based social platforms are owned by other companies with other business models and other goals. And if you think about the level of business model innovation that's happened at this mobile app layer in the US and compare it to Asia and WhatsApp, now it's a pretty bold claim to say the acquisition of Instagram prevented the rise of WhatsApp-like business models in the US. But let's just, play this out for a minute. WeChat. Apologies. So, I meant WeChat.
Yeah, as a quick aside for listeners, if you haven't been reading up on WeChat, it is insane. I mean,
absolutely insane.
It's on the surface a messaging app, but it's effectively like an operating system where it's much easier for especially non-technical folks to build a plugin for their business to WeChat that enables all sorts of things, from booking doctor's appointments to picking your kids up at school, all within this theoretical
WeChat
messaging
is, in my opinion, WeChat is nothing short of literally the creation of an entirely new major business model for technology companies. And that is the value-added services and integrations business model. Before WeChat, it's amazing. This product is given away for free, not monetized through advertising. And still in China, which is a brutally competitive market where it is very hard to monetize users, this product has, I believe the latest estimates are like a $7 ARPU, annual revenue per user in China.
Just more than Twitter and rivaling Facebook, and those are ad platforms.
Exactly. And that is pretty incredible. And so what I think is amazing is, because in the US you've had these new innovative mobile products be acquired by larger companies with older established business models, you haven't seen that happen in the US as much. Now, there are lots of other factors, like in China, there was no, mobile was really the first computing platform to be widely adopted across the whole population. There was no legacy desktop, product and technology layer like there was in the US. That certainly had a lot to do with it too. But imagine, what type of business model innovation we might have seen had Instagram remained independent. I don't know. And certainly Snapchat is playing with it too.
In terms of constellation of apps?
In terms of business models.
Yeah. Yeah, their channels thing will be really interesting to watch play out.
All right. We'll move quickly here, but new segment for the show for episode 2. We've already talked about
little theme music for
I know.
New segment.
What we've talked about this a bunch already, but for you, Ben, what kind of broad themes in technology does the Facebook Instagram acquisition kind of represent for you?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this when you sent me earlier your idea to do the new segment, and I was trying to think. I think you did a really nice job in the last segment, kind of bringing in the app constellation theme. I think the other theme that this sort of opens up is that you really have to own the audience, and that sounds trivial and obvious at first, but I think what I mean by that is, in any distribution channel, you have suppliers, you have a distribution, and then you have the audience. And with the rise of these services, it's becoming increasingly more important to own the default channel that the users go to for leisure, for distraction, for whatever it is, because in the near infinite nature of the internet, you can push whatever you want through that channel to reach that audience. And I think Facebook's core asset was, and still sort of is, being that core place where people want to go and want to, the first thing you want to do when you open your phone, when you have some downtime or whatever it is, you go there to be distracted. You go there for fun. You go there to see your friends, to see whatever you aspire to. And that, owning the channel, makes you the most powerful advertising platform in the world. And on top of that, makes you the most powerful a lot of other things in the world. I mean, we're seeing it now with Facebook Instant Articles and other experiments that we're playing with, but you are a very, very powerful force in your business model and to other people's business models if you are the first step in dishing out who gets the attention after you. And I think Facebook saw that as an incredible, dangerous threat of people want to look at Instagram instead of us, and then they can start shoving whatever they want in that feed. Yep. Even though that's kind of Instagram's model is to not clutter it up, they've managed to do a really nice job of taking that attention that they're getting as the front door of what you want to go look at and putting that where advertisers are appropriately putting their
yeah, it's I think this is one of the reasons why technology
companies with advertising business models have become so much larger in terms of size and reach and revenue and value than old world advertising models. I started my career steeped in old world media and advertising. I worked in media technology and media investment banking, and then I worked at a newspaper at the Wall Street Journal. And but I worked when I was in banking, I worked on television and cable networks a lot, and their content and distribution were separate. The distribution companies were the cable companies and the satellite companies, and they owned the distribution pipe, and the content companies were the cable networks, the AMCs, the Scripps, all the channels that you see on cable TV, and those were two separate things, and they both had their own advertising. They shared the advertising pie. Those two stages of the value chain, and although television advertising was and perhaps still might be larger than web digital based advertising as a whole, no one company could become as big as a Google or as a Facebook has, because Google and Facebook have, or at least Facebook has integrated and through Instagram integrated content and distribution within one single company, within one single app or constellation of apps.
Yeah, they are the channel. I mean, Facebook is the channel for where you go when you want social or downtime, or the variety of other services that Facebook offers, events and messaging and all that.
Yep.
And Google is where you go when you have intent.
Yep. So for me, I think, we've talked about a few things throughout the episode. We mentioned briefly technology waves, which is something that Ben and I talk a lot about. This concept.
We should do a whole episode.
We should do a special episode on waves. But the concept that in the tech world, there are these waves of technology that come every few years. And I think this is a perfect illustration of the wave of mobile coming and washing over the desktop wave, but bringing with it a whole new set of companies, of content and product models, of business models that may or may not have been implemented at least domestically. But that's one, and then the other one that I think is something I've been thinking about a lot lately in terms of technology themes. I think is the scalability and the leverage that technology gives you. And I'm thinking in particular about the number of employees at Instagram. I mean, this is just incredible. 13 employees with 30 million users.
Oh, and on those 13 employees, we were looking on LinkedIn too. I think 11 are still at Instagram.
Yeah, something crazy like that. Which is not typical for technology acquisitions.
Yet another example of Facebook doing an acquisition.
Doing a great job here. But 13 employees at this landmark acquisition. And today, even at, roughly 150 for 400 million users. And it's impossible to know how much revenue Instagram is generating today. But there was a great equity research report put out by Citigroup almost a year ago, in which they valued Instagram at $35 billion. And this was when Instagram had not quite 300 million users.
And what's Facebook's market cap?
I don't know offhand. I want to say it's right around 200 billion.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's what a ridiculous chunk, right? Acquired for $1 billion.
And it was less back then.
Right.
And in that report, they estimate that Instagram revenues could be on the order of about $2 billion. I mean, that's incredible.
And this year, right? Is it 20? I think it was maybe summer 2015 to 2016 or something like that.
Yep. This year, last year, Citigroup estimated $2 billion in revenue for Instagram this year in 2015. To do that with 150 employees is incredible. And then WhatsApp, which came later, something like 50 some odd employees, acquired for $20+ billion.
I'll raise the flag here and say not really fair to do the revenue calculation for the ad network, since they're piggybacking off of Facebook's ad network, and I'm sure that takes a lot of engineers.
True. But I think about the leverage that is possible with technology and technology companies versus, again, old world media where I spent time earlier in my career. I mean, nowhere near that kind of leverage that you can get. All right, let's wrap up.
Conclusion time.
Conclusion time.
So, acquired for $1 billion. December of last year, externally valued at $35 billion. Even ignoring the fact that that's based on, there's $2 billion in revenues this year. This is like not grasping at straws. This is a very real revenue product. And in fact, when it was acquired, I don't think it had revenue. They had no ad platform. They had
Nothing.
Pretty incredible what they've done since acquired. 35x multiple post-acquisition on that property alone. Not to mention all the ancillary benefits of potentially steering Facebook as a whole organization in the right direction on mobile. I mean, do I get a plus? It's an A+.
I know we need more disagreement on this show, but man, A+ for me too. This might even be the from a
multiple
return standpoint, even just straight financial returns. This might be the very best acquisition in technology history.
I'm curious. Is there ever how small of a scale do you have to go down to get something that was a 35x multiple in 3 years?
I mean, Bungie, perhaps.
Foreshadowing.
That'll be an interesting episode. By the way, listeners, if you have requests, suggestions, comments, thoughts, as we said,
if you could think of companies we haven't,
please send our way. We'd also love to have some guests on this show.
And by send it our way, there's Twitter. There's also a little feedback form on our site where you can submit stuff.
We'd also love to have guests. If you have particular insight into a great technology acquisition in history, that either you were part of it directly, or you worked on it as part of a third party, and you want to be on our show, shoot us a note.
Cool. About done here?
I think we're about done.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
We'll see you next time.
Who got the truth? Is it you? Is it you? Is it you? Who got the truth now?
All right, listeners, we have a longtime favorite acquired company to tell you about, Modern Treasury. Modern Treasury is the software platform that turns money movement operations into code.
Yeah, for years now, services like Stripe, Adyen, and Square have enabled developers to accept credit card payments in apps. But that's only the tip of the iceberg of what a business needs to fully handle the movement of money in and out of their company. Those payment actions from Stripe and Adyen, et cetera, flowed through to ledger systems and then reconciliations, compliance verifications, and that's before any cash actually moves between institutions, which of course involves banking operations.
Yes, their APIs, of course, work with Plaid, Stripe, Intuit, etc., but also with their incredible banking partner network with over 30 banks, meaning that for the first time, you literally can turn your banking operations at any of those institutions into software. This means faster payments, easy adoptions of new payment rails when they come out, like FedNow. It means automatic reconciliation and real-time financial data. This lets you move money at the speed of software, which, as we now know after the first half of 2023, being able to move money fast is very important.
Yes, we love Modern Treasury so much. The founders and really the whole team have become close friends of Ben and mine, really back to when they first got started. And this is a very cool full circle moment that just happened. We just emceed their first big conference here in San Francisco, Transfer, which happened at the beginning of June.
Yes, if your business involves money movement, be it a marketplace, fintech platform, real estate, lending, investing, or anyone who reconciles or moves money, go on over to moderntreasury.com/acquired and make sure that when you get in touch, you tell them that Ben and David sent you.
All right, David, you ready?
I'm ready, Ben.
All right.
Who got the truth? Is it you? Is it you? Is it you? Who got the truth now? Is it you? Is it you? Is it you? Sit me down, say it straight. Another story on the way. Who got the truth?
Welcome to episode 3 of Acquired. This is the one where we talk about Twitch. Today we're going to try something a little bit different. We've been listening to our listeners and getting a lot of feedback that not only do David and I agree too much, but we're doing softballs. And,
Feedback is a gift, Ben.
Yeah, thank you. We really like hearing from everyone. And, while originally our goal was to set out and only review the super stellar, spectacular ones that only went super well, and what we can learn from those, it's a little boring.
People are telling us they want some spice.
Yeah. So we're gonna do. Obviously, Twitch has been a little bit more recent. It's a 2014 acquisition, and here recording in November of 2015, and there's still a lot of open questions. And I think people are generally positive and optimistic, and there's a exploding market there, but a lot more to talk about.
Whole lot to talk about. As always, thank you everyone for the reviews, for the feedback. You can check out our website at acquired.fm. We're on Twitter at acquiredfm. And please keep the feedback coming.
All right, listeners, our sponsor is one of our favorite companies, Vanta, and we have something very new from them to share. Of course, Vanta enables companies to generate more revenue by getting their compliance certifications. That's SOC 2, ISO 27001. But the thing that we want to share now is Vanta has grown to become the best security compliance platform as you hit hypergrowth and scale into a larger enterprise.
It's kind of wild. When we first started working with Vanta and met Christina, my gosh, they had like a couple hundred customers, maybe. Now they've got 5,000, some of the largest companies out there. It's awesome.
Yeah, and they offer a tremendous amount of customization now for more complex security needs. So if you're a larger company and in the past you showed Vanta to your compliance department, you might have heard something like, oh, well, we've already got a compliance process in place and we can't integrate this new thing. But now, even if you already have a SOC 2, Vanta makes maintaining your compliance even more efficient and robust.
They launched Vendor Risk Management. This allows your company to quickly understand the security posture of the vendors that you're choosing in a standardized way that cuts down on security review times. This is great. And then on the customization front, they now also enable custom frameworks built around your controls and policies. Of course, that's in addition to the fact that with Vanta, you don't just become compliant once, you stay compliant with real-time data pulled from all of your systems, now all of your partner systems, and you get a trust report page to prove it to your customers. If you click the link in the show notes here or go to vanta.com/acquired, you can get a free trial. And if you decide you love it, you will also get $1,000 off when you become a paying customer. Make sure you go to vanta.com/acquired.
So we're changing locations a little bit tonight. We are in the wonderful den of David's home here on the creative and secure SSID of Default 2.
We're really creative in the Scholich Rosenthal household.
Yes. So thank you so much for your generous hospitality, David and Jenny.
Always happy to, Ben. And you listeners as well.
All right, let's get on with it.
Let's jump into it. So, right about, what was this, 14 months ago, there had been acquisition rumors swirling about a young 3-year-old live streaming network, primarily used for streaming games, called Twitch.tv.
Which itself has a crazy history.
Crazy history.
If you were watching either of the previous incarnations of this company, you wouldn't have seen this end coming.
And the incarnations being first Justin.tv, which I believe was one of the first Y Combinator companies. Am I right there?
Yeah, I don't know what batch. One of the early ones.
It was like 2007, I think.
Justin TV is this incredible, before smartphones, before smartphones got big anyway, kind of before GoPro and all that. Justin Khan strapped a camera to himself and broadcast what he was doing all the time, 24/7. Ended up going through Y Combinator with the crazy.
It's hard to overstate how crazy that was in 2007. This is like either pre-iPhone or like right when the first iPhone came out. And the idea that you would stream your life 24/7 on the internet. Yeah, YouTube was already out there, but that was recorded video live. I mean, this was a crazy concept.
Yeah.
And ultimately it didn't work.
No, even when they got a little bit, became a platform where anyone could stream anything live. There were competitors. There was Ustream. What was the other big one? So this was sort of an era where there were platforms coming up. This is classic build the platform before the use case, where there's platforms coming up for people to to stream whatever they wanted live. There was incredible amounts of piracy, a whole bunch of seedy stuff, and there wasn't a clear winner yet for what the thing was that was going to win in live streaming and what the purpose of it was.
Yep. So that was 2007. Fast forward a couple years, total fail. Didn't work. Instagram, which we talked about on our last show, had happened. Was not yet acquired by Facebook, but was a thing. And Justin TV is still kicking along. And what do? They work on a new pivot, spin off this company called Social Cam.
Yeah.
You remember Social Cam, Ben?
Interesting. Yeah. And that was kind of funny because that was, actually, I remember, I think they launched at South by Southwest because I was down there and that was where I first saw a whole bunch of the marketing for it. Now, you know, it's a super cool concept. I think that was in parallel. I think that Justin TV was still running at that time. And
Yeah, I think that might have been right.
it's like some employees left Justin TV, or maybe it was under the same umbrella company. And I think it was
And
just,
we should say, and Social Cam being, this is one of those things that, like, as VCs, we often hate this for that companies, although sometimes they work. But in this case, Instagram for video, quote unquote, not a thing, or at least not a thing at that point in time.
Yeah, great idea though. I mean, I think that there's a nugget there, and it was actually one of the most well designed kind of consumer apps that had launched around that era.
Yep.
I remember thinking that, boy, there's a killer team behind this. Seems highly reputable. They're really touching on a very human nerve here, but much like Justin TV, never found wide consumer adoption.
Well, and it's interesting. It got wide adoption this was the era of the Facebook steroid era. This is like the baseball steroid era of, you know, the 90s, when before Facebook went public, and anyone who could figure out how to leverage the Facebook graph and get adoption on mobile apps and websites.
Were they one of those companies that
they were one of those
stole the graph?
They stole the graph. And so crazy, you know, Social Cam spins out from Justin.tv in 2011, ends up getting acquired less than a year later by Autodesk. Autodesk, Ben, acquires
I think I
Social
used that
Cam
in
for
college.
$60 million. Crazy. Vidi, which was another one that did the same thing. I don't know what ended up happening to them. They petered out. Maybe they got acquired by somebody. Anyway, that was chapter 2 of this company. Then chapter 3, right around that same time, is Twitch.
And Twitch, for anyone who's not a gamer out there, I actually was looking into a little bit today, kind of where the name comes from, and because it has a certain feel to it. And you go to the site, and it's purple, and it's got definitely the kind of gamer vibe, and it attracts a pro gamer audience and that sort of archetype. And Twitch gameplay is a reference to, you know, that there are games that are much more strategy based, and there are games that are kind of turn based.
Fast Twitch.
Yeah. So Twitch gameplay refers to any game where you have to very quickly move the mouse around the screen. And, you know, if it's a first person shooter or something, and you got to get one guy, quickly move over, get the other guy, quickly move over. And it's kind of like, it's a touch and finesse and moving very quickly to do very physical actions rather than a slower kind of strategy game.
Yep. And so Twitch was a dedicated streaming platform for streaming yourself playing video games on your computer.
Which, you know, I think most of our listeners, some of our listeners, I can't really guess the percent, but a lot of people today understand how big Twitch is and understand how big
increasingly
esports, you know, universe is. And
gaming is itself. I mean, coincided around this time with the development in the gaming industry of MOBAs and things like League of Legends and Dota and basically games becoming services and products that could live on and develop these huge audience. But, you know, in the past, before about this time, games would be, you know, packaged software that you'd buy on a disc and you'd stick in your console or your PC and you'd play it by yourself, and you'd have an experience. Maybe you'd play it for 100 hours and then you beat it and you're done. But now, at this time, games started becoming living, breathing services. World of Warcraft was the first example of this, but then it's just completely come to revolutionize the whole industry, this model. And so now you have games that just live on and on as experiences.
The weekly reset. It's incredible to see, you know, with or the weekly or monthly. Hearthstone has the monthly reset.
Yep.
Journey year 1, year 2. I mean, it's a whole different model.
Yep. And
it's so funny thinking about sort of the old ones. If you'd have told me in 2009 that, you know, a company be acquired for $1 billion that let people watch other people play video games, I'd call you crazy. I mean,
it's almost as if in 2007 when the iPhone came out, somebody would have told you that what did we just say? Was it 11 people working for Instagram when it was acquired, or something? 11, 12, 13, something like that.
In the teens.
That a company with number of employees in the teens that made an app, whatever that was, for this smartphone would get acquired by Facebook for $1 billion in 2012. You'd have thought they were crazy.
Yeah, and it's interesting how it reflects a lot on the tenacity of the Justin TV team. I mean, I think that they touched on something where they probably, you know, they obviously didn't know what the use case that would hit was of live streaming, but they had a sense around live streaming. And it, you know, at Pioneer Square Labs, one of the things that we do is like, we don't really trust our gut until we prototype stuff and until we get feedback and see what sort of catches on. And I think that it really goes to show you don't know. And they were seeing on Justin TV a lot of people using it for gaming purposes, which is why they kind of decided to open Twitch as a dedicated. I think they spent some time where there were several months where they were just working on Twitch, not improving Justin TV, reopened Twitch to the public. And it goes to show you don't really know what's going to stick until you start watching usage patterns of how people are using your stuff.
Totally. So let's get into the topic of the show, which is an acquisition. So to start that off, I don't think we've actually said the actual facts. August 25th, 2014, acquisition rumors have been swirling about Twitch for months. People think Google and YouTube are about to buy the company.
Makes sense to me.
Makes a lot of sense. YouTube, number one, you know, video platform online, thinking about getting into streaming and live video becoming more of a thing. And of course, it makes sense that this would be a great channel on YouTube. August 25th, announcement drops. Amazon buying Twitch, $970 million in cash. By the way, who could have foreseen this? Huge strategic error by the Twitch management team and board. Not negotiating for stock here. So, Amazon closing share price on August 25th, 2014, $334.02. Amazon closing share price today, 14 months later, $665.60.
It would be a win if I actually owned a property here in Seattle. It's a shame I'm still renting. You just mentioned something about not negotiating for stock. Do we know that this was an all cash?
It was an all cash deal. It was all cash deal.
So that's what $1 billion in cash looks like.
Could have been $2 billion. But that's a technical detail. Everybody was still happy in the moment and probably still. However, Twitch has continued post acquisition to just grow like a rocket ship. So when Twitch was acquired, I believe they had about 55 million monthly unique viewers. Mm-hmm. That was in August 2014. They announced in January 2015 that they passed 100 million unique monthly viewers. They haven't announced any stats since then, so that's the latest we have, but that was 10 months ago.
Which is, you know, thinking about in the context of the last, you know, acquisition we talked about, or I guess it's, last one, Instagram, you know, celebrating now years after the acquisition, hitting 400 million monthly active users. Now, these visitors are not necessarily logged in, but I guess they're probably tracked by IP address or something, so they know exactly, you know, how to...
Just like any web property.
Not count repeat sessions, but 100 million monthly active visitors, it's crazy. I mean, it's got to be like the demographics are wider spanning than this, but like every teenage boy in America.
Not America. I think this is one of the key things about Twitch too.
Yeah.
Like, it's America, but like that's only a small part of it. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
around the whole world.
South Korea is the kind of the hub of
The
a lot of these
gaming
tournaments right now, right?
Capital of the world, yeah. Professional gaming capital of the world. And it's a pretty amazing platform. So one of the other really cool things I think about Twitch, unlike a lot of
there's one other stat to throw in there. 1.5 million broadcasters. So that's actually a little bit above, but it's always interesting to think about, the adage that for every, 100 in the Reddit terminology, 100 lurkers you have one poster or one content creator.
And that ratio roughly holds here.
Roughly, yeah.
One of the things I think is particularly interesting about Twitch as a internet and digital media property is that it's got a really robust and diverse monetization strategy, and has for much of its life. So
would you call it a 3-pronged approach?
You could call it a 3-pronged approach. And it's interesting, it could easily be a 4-pronged approach if Twitch, eventually they will get their act together. But basically, for our viewers who don't know, Twitch makes money in 3 ways today. They have advertising that they sell on the site.
Yeah, for anyone who's visited Twitch and knows you get about 3 seconds of gameplay before you have something really abrasive thrown in your face.
Very abrasive. Not to mention all the takeover ads and banner ads all over the site. And then they have Twitch Turbo, which is basically a $8.99 a month subscription that you can pay to get rid of that advertising on Twitch.
It's true. And you get, there's a variety of other things. You can have, colors of your text and custom emojis and a badge and a lot of the sort of gamified and virtual goods. But that's a lot of money just to remove ads from one website.
Yep. It's a lot of money. You're talking
that's more,
$100 a year.
That's more than Netflix to simply remove ads
from one website on the internet.
Or Spotify, or I guess on a family plan Spotify, but yeah.
Then I think this is just brilliant. The other half of Twitch's business model comes from revenue shares with their broadcasters, which are referred to as streamers, in the form of subscriptions. They make it really easy with just a button on the site, on the page of a streamer, to quote subscribe to that streamer for $5 a month, and then Twitch keeps half of that, $2.50 a month. Half.
This blows my mind. Think about marketplace businesses where you can take a 15% take or a 20% take, or you look at the real estate business where you can get or Airbnb has a 6% take, 3% on each side.
It's 12 to 14%, but still.
Okay, but 50%.
Yeah, 50%.
So their Twitch is getting away with murder.
Basically getting away with murder. And then let's just run through some of the stats here. So this is some numbers that are publicly available on the internet. We'll do some back of the envelope math here. There are about 100 million Twitch viewers out there. They announced that in January, 100 million unique viewers. Mm-hmm. Roughly the conversion rate on viewers to subscribers is about 1%. And we know this from a few Twitch streamers have openly talked about and quote open sourced their economics.
So can we assume there's a million-ish?
So you can assume there's about 1 million-ish subscribers. They're paying $5 a month.
Subscribers or subscriptions?
I'm assuming subscriptions.
Okay.
So there probably are fewer than that who actually subscribe, but they might subscribe to multiple channels.
If this is sample data based on an individual...
This is one individual streamer, the percentage of people that watch his channel to convert. So I think it would be actual subscriptions on the site.
It could be higher. So if it's 1% of his viewers subscribe, it's likely that, or it's possible that viewer also subscribes to a different channel too. I don't know what the behavior is. It's probably not, 2. It might be 1 point something, but yeah.
We're keeping the numbers simple here. Sure. So, all right, 1 million subscriptions, let's assume on Twitch at $5 a month. And at a 50% revenue share to Twitch, that's $30 million a year. In basically 100% margin. I guess Twitch is paying credit card fees out of that. So take Six double it because they're only taking half of the revenue share. So they're paying credit card processing fees on the whole. So take 6% out of that. But so 95% margin.
Not margin, that'd be their take, right? Because like their margin, we're not figuring in, AWS costs or.
But this is just complete. They're still monetizing in other ways through advertising and Turbo. This is just like
So we'll call
purely incremental marginal profit.
Yeah, it's true. It costs
to
them
Twitch.
no additional.
Literally no additional, except for credit card processing fees and putting a little purple button that says subscribe on their site. And I'm sure there's some engineering costs there too, but like incremental margin.
What are you talking about? It's one line of code.
Yeah. Not to mention synergies with AWS. It's pretty incredible. It's pretty incredible. And then this might end up being the biggest form of monetization for Twitch in the long term is tips. So there is this behavior that's emerged on the Twitch platform, where Twitch doesn't enable this at all. Streamers are hacking this together with third-party software, where as they're streaming and speaking to their fans and their viewers as they're streaming the games they're playing, they'll solicit tips, just like a street performer would. They've got a tip jar, and they're using third-party plugins to do this, and people are paying them like an incredible amounts of money. So streamers people have given. It's just like the mobile games business, they're whales that have given like $1,000 tips, $10,000 tips like at once. And right now Twitch isn't monetizing any of this, but you got to imagine they are planning to bake this natively into the platform and take a cut out of this.
I'm trying to imagine a scenario where something happens that's awesome enough in some gameplay that I'm watching where I decide it's worth $1,000.
There are people that spend thousands of dollars on Clash of Clans, Ben.
Yeah, but
this is differential pricing for entertainment.
I'd argue, but I know some, so it's.
I know, scary. All right. Basically, I think the punchline of this discussion here is Twitch has very quickly. Remember, this whole business, even though it was a spin out from Justin TV, was started in 2011.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, we say spin
it's
out.
4 years old.
You would think in all of this, pivoting around and changing companies and spinning out other companies that this gets extremely expensive. And, a lot of times, like you look at like a Jawbone or any of these companies that take like a Series E and F round and get into the private equity and, that sort of thing, that they take huge sums of money. Mm-hmm. They only took 3 rounds of funding and it was only $42 million. So
I vividly remember. I can.
They kept it. $42 million is a lot of money, but they kept it relatively cheap considering the outcome.
I think I can talk about that. I won't use any numbers or names, but when I was in business school, I interned the summer between my first and second years at one of the top, a really, really amazing venture capital firm called Meritech, and they're a late stage. Venture capital firm. They only do late stage investments, and it was late spring, and I had already lined up my internship. I was going to spend the summer with them, and I got a call from one of the partners there and said, "Hey, I'm looking at this deal for a company that's raising money. The company's called Twitch. Have you ever heard of it? Do you know anything about it?" And I didn't know anything about it. And I did a bunch of research, and, being a eager, soon to be intern to impress, I thought, I'm going to do some research. I'm going to write up some thoughts, help them look at this, even though I haven't started working yet. I really can't wait to dive in. And I just looked at the space and I thought, there's no way this is like, it's interesting what's happening here, but there's just no way this is going to be big. I mean, this is like a derivative of a sector of the economy that itself is like not that big in gaming, right? Like it can't be that big. And the valuation they wanted for this round was at the time seemed like a very large valuation. It was much less than the eventual acquisition price. And so I wrote a long email. I remember I was Jenny and I, my wife Jenny and I were in Sonoma for the weekend for a business school trip. And I spent a bunch of the weekend writing up these thoughts, in this memo, sent it to the partner. Basically can't recommend we do this. And this goes to show you I have so many stories like this.
Wait, what
Venture capital is a humbling business.
what company name were you not going to say there?
Oh, I wasn't going to talk about any of the numbers. Or
Oh,
anything.
yeah, okay.
But suffice to say, had Meritech invested in Twitch in this round that happened, and I forget who did lead the round, but it would have been a very nice return.
Yeah.
But you know what's interesting? It would have been a very nice return, and especially as a late stage investor where you're trying to get a 3x return is a good return, a 5x return is a great return.
And you're talking total fund, like to
Yeah, but actually, as a late stage investor, it's on individual investments because you're hoping that most of your investments you're going to get a good return on. You're
right,
taking
you're not
much less
investing in
risk.
10,
Yep.
Assuming 9 will fail in one.
But what I think is amazing to think about this acquisition, when Twitch was acquired for $1 billion, even I hadn't thought much about Twitch since that summer. Thought, wow, I was wrong. Like, guess it did turn out to be a big company. But now look at Twitch a year later. $1 billion is pretty cheap.
Yeah, so this is the fun part of the show. I think there's one of the reasons we wanted to do this was because I think there's a lot of first of all, easy numbers to look up and very. It's the same reason that gossip is fun conversation to have. It's because it's low hanging fruit. Everyone can very clearly draw the dotted line. Everyone can laugh about it, and everyone can romanticize and fantasize and wish they were picking that winner. And you see, oh my God, $42 million in funding going to $1 billion acquisition. Oh my God, I can do the math and know exactly how big that multiple is. And that conversation happens over and over and over again. And I think the thing that we just don't talk about that much is, great, $1 billion. So now, let's say Amazon's an individual person. Well, that person's now $1 billion in debt. How do you grow that investment? How do you get your money back and then some? And what are the kind of market forces and things going on within Amazon right now that actually make that fun to watch?
And we haven't, part of the rationale for wanting to do this episode too is we're here in Seattle and Amazon is one of the most impressive New York Times articles about the company and workplace culture there notwithstanding, one of the most impressive and greatest technology companies, not only of our time, but probably ever. I mean, the innovation that is driven within that company is just incredible, and that continues to be driven. And the company's already, $100 billion revenue run rate and still innovating like a tiny startup, which is amazing. And the impact that it's had on Seattle, on the ecosystem, physically on the city is just incredible. So we really wanted to have an excuse to talk about Amazon. We haven't really talked about Amazon yet. But what's amazing, they've left Twitch pretty much alone.
Yeah, we saw something launch a couple weeks ago, but you would think after something like this gets acquired, they'll take some of the video technology and make it available very quickly as a higher abstraction layer in AWS, or they'll start bucketing in some part of Twitch with Prime, or they'll throw the Amazon bar on top. Or do they do single sign-in yet? Can you log in with an Amazon?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. The first thing they launched was not a unification with the rest of Amazon's properties. It was Twitch Creative.
Yeah.
It was, they did this
Bob Ross.
super, super clever, marathon of watching Bob Ross paint to kick off. You can watch creative people perform their craft, while they're live streaming it, like you would watch anybody do their game while they're live streaming it. And, too soon to really know anything about that, but it really interesting how the company did indeed largely leave it alone.
Yep. Over time, maybe we'll see them integrate it more in some ways into Amazon. I think about when we were talking about Instagram in our last episode and how Instagram also has been largely left alone by Facebook. However, behind the scenes, we talked about ad buying and how Facebook's been very open, especially on their earnings calls, with about how successful selling joint ad buys to advertisers between Facebook and Instagram has been. And it's interesting, we talked about some of the direct monetization aspects that Twitch has, but advertising still, by all estimates, we don't really know, but by all estimates, is probably the biggest revenue stream for Twitch. And Amazon a lot of people don't know this, but has a very big advertising business.
Yep.
And you can imagine Amazon has a big advertising business, especially to companies trying to sell products on Amazon. A lot of video game companies, both console manufacturers, PC, gaming accessory manufacturers, and games themselves advertise and sell on Amazon. They also advertise on Twitch. You could imagine that being a synergy in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really interesting business for Amazon, because one of the things that they're able to do, by having that ad network and letting you view products on other sites, and that that little iframed advertisement that you see for an Amazon.com product or any other thing that they're using to on their ad network, is they get a good picture of what websites you shop on. So it's or even just visit. So if you come to Amazon.com, they can use that in aggregate with your purchase history, or if you're not a signed in user, to just understand sort of what sites you've been visiting and what sort of things you're going to buy.
Yep.
If having Twitch as a first party property and integrating some of that ad technology with the large advertising business that is Twitch, there's a lot of potential.
And let's think about where Twitch is going now and might be going in the future with Twitch Creative, potentially other channels. These are all, let's take Creative, for example, painting, digital creative tools. These are all areas that they're very natural advertising opportunities and very natural product selling opportunities. Could imagine integrations with Amazon on that front.
Yeah, on integrations with Amazon, there's two kind of points I want to bring up. Looking back at old posts from the Justin TV folks in the early days, I think they had started on AWS, moved off for at the time what was cost reasons and customization reasons. I think they just needed a little bit more granular control with their whole streaming video stack. But then, at least by some point between 2012 and 2014, had pretty much wholly moved back onto AWS. So being acquired by the very company that powers your entire technology platform, I mean, that's there's a
Is
lot of.
this a
margin
harbinger
there,
of things to come? The Amazon, you could say Amazon might have had a real window. For me, I've worked in the venture capital business. I spent a lot of time thinking about tech, and Twitch was like totally under the radar screen for me. But Amazon with AWS, they kind of have this like dashboard into like what's actually hot among tech companies at all times. Like, did they see this and say like, gosh, Twitch is undervalued, we should buy it because we have the data? I don't know. But again, back to the point we made earlier about the impact that Amazon has had on the entire tech ecosystem, but the huge impact here in Seattle. I mean, everybody here is, 0 degrees of separation away from Amazon in everything in this ecosystem here.
Yeah. So I can't second that enough. So the other point that I wanted to make on top of the fact that they're integrating with their technology stack in a very vertical way, is Prime. Prime looks an awful lot like Turbo.
Yeah.
I mean, Prime has become a mechanism where people buy almost 3 times the number of things on Amazon when they're a Prime subscriber, and it's an annual subscription fee that you pay upfront for later returns of many different things that you would have accrued over a long period of time.
Yep.
And boy, Turbo is a thing that you pay upfront at the beginning of the month that pays ahead of time for all the ads you would have seen. You have investment in the platform.
Historically, Amazon has made huge efforts to get young people in the form of students hooked onto Prime.
Oh, with students. I think first year free for students.
Yep. And
or maybe all years in school free.
What's the average age of a Twitch viewer? Or, it's I wouldn't call, I wouldn't call either of us old, but the average age of a Twitch viewer is definitely younger than both of us.
Oh, we're old, David.
Yeah, I mean, we are old. Let's face it. And you imagine someday soon, Turbo becomes Prime and is part of Amazon Prime, and then you've just hooked new generation on Amazon Prime.
Sure is a compelling value prop. I could pay my, $8 or $9 a month for Turbo.
Or I could pay $99 a year for Amazon Prime and get Turbo plus everything else in Prime.
All those videos, all that free shipping.
Yep.
Yeah.
Drones dropping things off at your doorstep.
Not to be speculative.
No, nothing they haven't announced.
This is a great time to tell you about one of our very favorite companies, Crusoe.
So Crusoe, as listeners know by now, is a clean compute cloud provider specifically built for AI workloads. NVIDIA is one of their major partners, and literally Crusoe's data centers are nothing but racks and racks of A100s and H100s. And because Crusoe's cloud is purpose-built for AI and run on wasted, stranded, or clean energy, they can provide significantly better performance per dollar than traditional cloud providers.
Yes, we talked about that on our ACQ2 episode with Crusoe CEO Chase Lockmiller.
The other element that makes Crusoe special is the environmental angle. Crusoe, of course, locates their data centers at stranded energy sites. So think oil flares, wind farms that can't use all the energy they generate, etc., and uses that power that would otherwise be wasted to run your AI workloads instead.
Yep. Obviously, it's a huge benefit for the environment and for customers on costs since Crusoe doesn't rely on the energy grid. Energy is the second largest cost of running AI after, of course, the price you pay NVIDIA for the chips. And these lower energy costs get passed on to customers.
It's super cool that they can put their data centers out there in these remote locations where, quote unquote, energy happens, as opposed to the other hyperscalers such as AWS and Google and Azure, who need to build their data centers close to major traffic hubs where the internet happens because they are doing everything in their clouds.
Yep. If you, your company, or your portfolio companies would like to use the lower cost and more performant infrastructure for your AI workloads, go to crusoecloud.com/acquired. That's CRUSOE cloud.com/acquired, or click the link in the show notes.
All right, so this section is the part where we talk about, does it fall in the category of people, technology, product, or business line, or is it another thing completely? This is a pretty good framework to sort of understand. I think we've talked about, the various reasons why they would do this acquisition, but to sort of give a framework for what buckets to drop certain things into, it's a good opportunity for David and I to disagree a little bit too. So, David, what do you think?
I'm a little torn here. Could be a product. However, I'm going to go business line because I think, especially thinking back to, I really think you're onto something with this Prime when we talk about the value of the acquisition and measuring its success. And again, being speculative here, but if you imagine the value to Prime here, which is one of the core parts of Amazon, Twitch adds a new layer of benefit to Prime. There was Prime Instant Video before, which you could argue is somewhat similar, but I think this is a different thing. That's like movies versus television, and this adds the television to Amazon's offerings and to Prime and what Prime subscribers get. So I think, and I really do think that this is gonna foreshadow what I'm going to talk about in the section I like. I think Twitch over time will be more than games. I think it will be a platform for watching live, watching people do things live on the internet, almost like Justin TV originally was formed for.
I know I said I was going to disagree, but I think that's the obvious correct choice. I'd say as a product, if it's something that was already sort of being integrated, but they're using this as a completely different channel to a completely different audience, and we're really not seeing kind of like I would call it more of a product acquisition if you could somehow get to Twitch from Amazon, but you just can't.
Yeah,
it's a completely different access to a completely new set of customers with a different business line, and one that, despite all the sort of integrations and synergy that we've talked about, I think it's a self-sustaining business, and we don't know that for sure. Amazon hasn't yet broken that out in earnings, but Superdata released this research report saying that the gaming video content market is worth $3.8 billion. That was earlier this year in 2015, and they're saying that Twitch is going to generate $1.6 billion of that revenue this year.
I think there's no way that can be right.
Even
but
if
still,
even if it's half of that. Like,
It's
these
a lot of
research
money.
reports are always a little bit. Thank you for the folks at Superdata for doing this great research for us. But like, even if it's a third of that, right? Like, let's say it's like $500 million. Like, that's growing quickly. The
Yep.
deal price was only $1 billion. If it's not already, a profitable decision to purchase this company on its own without combining any of these other things, we're a year out.
Yeah, I think it's going to happen real fast. Okay, so my favorite segment that I want to make sure we keep is, what does this acquisition, what technology theme does this acquisition illustrate for you? One of the things Ben and I talk about a lot, and it's one of my favorite things to talk about, is like these lasting themes in technology. Technology is a space that changes super quickly, but there are these themes that last generation to generation, and like the idea that technology comes in waves, or scalability, or all sorts of things, how fast things change. I've got some, Ben, if you have thoughts, go ahead, but I've got, well, I'll go first. For me, Twitch really illustrates this theme that I just love in technology, which is oftentimes things that end up being really, really big and world changing. When they start out, they look like a toy. And Twitch, this is like the definition of it looked like a toy in the beginning. When I was writing that memo, it looked like a toy to me. Video games. What's that? There's no way, even if this wins that category, it's not that big. But I totally missed the boat that, like, video games were themselves being transformed into something way bigger than they used to be. But B, video games were just the start for Twitch. And this is speculative here. It's still mostly video games, but I think Twitch Creative, again, foreshadows a future or presages a future where Twitch is about the original Justin TV vision, which was people doing things live on the internet, television on the internet, and live TV on the internet. And I just think this is such a great example of this was something so many people dismissed as small, as toy-like in the beginning, but has actually become really huge.
Yeah, so what you're sort of to pattern match a little bit here, to hear what you're saying is that, you're looking at something and you're aware of the incumbents and it looks sort of like a toy to you, and that can't possibly displace whatever the current thing you're using is because it's merely games, or it's just a little thing where people are watching other people play video games. It sounds a lot like disruption theory. Like, it sounds a lot like the Clayton Christensen sort of.
Well, I think the twist here is that I'm not sure even, I don't know, but you could certainly imagine that even the Twitch founders and management team themselves wouldn't have envisioned this.
I'm not convinced they ever do.
Yeah. Or any more than, I don't know if the Airbnb founders envisioned that one day, they would have more, Airbnb would have more hotel, just night stays in a single night than all the other hotel chains in the world, like, combined. I don't, if they're not there, they will be soon.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I think, like, if we are thinking of it in the context of disruption theory, and let's say it's like, Google Docs sort of, scaring the heck out of Office, what's the incumbent? Like, what are they displacing here? Where
For Twitch?
It was a toy, and what's the thing they're displacing?
Television. Because it's what I don't have the stat offhand, but it's something like the average Twitch user watches like 3 hours of Twitch a day.
Oh, it's insane. Yeah, I've got the stat.
Insane.
It's 58% of Twitch users.
So that's 58 million people
that are tuning in at all during the day.
Yep.
It's not 58 because it's not
on a daily basis instead of a month. Okay, still a lot of people
are watching for more than 3 hours. I mean, this is like once you pop the fun don't stop.
And that's
thing.
Love it. Speaking of television and commercials, and yeah, what does that sound like? That sounds like television, where people who watch television watch like on average 6 hours a day.
Yeah, crazy.
Ben, what's your grade? Wait, so are we doing this grade today or grade in the future? Since this is a speculative episode.
Let's grade as if we are historians judging Jeff Bezos. So we're in the future. We are future historians
It's a
tonight.
weighty task.
Yeah. As a future historian, looking back at Amazon, deciding if this was a good decision or not, and the dust is still settling. We have pluses and minuses, so I'm not going to A plus this, but I think it's an A. Even on the conservative basis of how this business line does alone, its payback period is incredibly short. It's going to be 2 years or less. It's hard to throw an exact number on that.
We don't know the numbers,
we don't know
but
exactly what it's
going to do well.
It's not a long payback period, and the ways that they're tying into all the existing parts of the business are, not evident yet. But there's a lot of potential
Prime customer
there.
acquisition.
And Amazon
also,
is so good at testing this stuff. It's just hard to imagine that they're going to screw that part up. I think that they have had some acquisitions where they did not do that well in the past, but I think that if we see them do kind of this Prime Turbo combination, or we see them leverage any of the ad technology sharing, or or even if it helps AWS's business grow and further develop their video platform for other people.
Yep.
I think that
They just bought Elemental Technologies, which is a
very
video encoding
very
platform.
clearly focused on building out the video platform.
Yep.
It's a solid A.
Okay, so here's again, we've been very I know we're looking for disagreement here. It's really hard to disagree with. If Twitch stays on the trajectory it's on, no doubt this I really think this could be an Instagram style acquisition.
What would have to happen for it not to
Okay,
be?
so here's what I was going to go with.
Yeah.
And by Instagram style, I mean as we talked about on the last show, Facebook buys Instagram for $1 billion. 2 years later, Citigroup puts out an equity research report on Facebook valuing Instagram at $35 billion within Facebook. I really think the same thing could happen here. Whether it'll be 2 years, I don't know, but in a short period of time. Here's how it could go wrong if we're thinking from the future. Amazon is incredibly strong at a lot of things. Amazon is also a company and a culture that is very monolithic. And the senior leaders at Amazon, the people who drive the business, make decisions every day, they're the same people. They've been in place for 10 plus years, all of them. Andy Jassy, who runs AWS, he's been at Amazon at least 15 years. Amazon itself is only 20 years old. Jeff Blackburn, Jeff Wilkie, all the senior people at Amazon. Jeff Bezos is quote S team. Now Twitch, very smartly, like Instagram, they've kept it totally independent. Emmett Shear, the CEO of Twitch, is still the quote CEO of Twitch. I was reading an interview with him and he says, "I'm not the SVP of the Twitch division at Amazon. I'm the CEO of Twitch." But Amazon hasn't done this before. We're up here in Seattle. This is not Silicon Valley. Twitch is in Silicon Valley. If at some point they decide to more deeply integrate this, make Twitch the Twitch division of Amazon, I think they could really lose a lot of the mojo here.
What you mean if it looks like IMDb, or maybe sort of a little bit more like Audible, or
Yeah, and like those the way if Twitch is going to stay on the growth trajectory it's on, it needs world-class people and world-class talent and people who are motivated. And typically the way you do that in technology companies and in Silicon Valley is with equity, and with both literal equity and like metaphorical equity and ownership of the business.
Can I have metaphorical equity in this podcast?
Yeah, right. And Amazon's not a place that gives that to people, within core Amazon. It's like you're on the S team or you're not. So I think that's how they could mess it up. So far, they're making the right moves, but that's my doom and gloom scenario.
That didn't come with a letter.
Oh, yeah. Well, gosh, in that case, it would be, I don't know, B-. I mean, of course, it would still be great, but it would have been not realizing its potential. I don't think they're going to do that, though.
Yeah,
I think
you have to assign like a likelihood percentage to that screw up and
Yeah.
weight it.
They're doing all the right things so far.
Yeah. So we'll say mine's based on the non-doom and gloom perspective, which I think we both agree is the more likely path. But the kind of impressive thing there is B- even if they manage to kind of screw it up on a long-term integration, because it's going to return capital.
It seems obvious that they got a bargain here.
Yeah, I think so too.
All right.
Is that it?
The future will tell. Let us know what you think of this episode, the speculative nature, the more freeform nature. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Who got the truth? Is it you? Is it you? Is it you? Who got the truth now? Huh?
All right, listeners, we have a longtime favorite acquired company to tell you about, Modern Treasury. Modern Treasury is the software platform that turns money movement operations into code.
Yeah, for years now, services like Stripe, Adyen, and Square have enabled developers to accept credit card payments in apps. But that's only the tip of the iceberg of what a business needs to fully handle the movement of money in and out of their company. Those payment actions from Stripe and Adyen, et cetera, flowed through to ledger systems and then reconciliations, compliance verifications, and that's before any cash actually moves between institutions, which of course involves banking operations.
Yes, their APIs, of course, work with Plaid, Stripe, Intuit, etc., but also with their incredible banking partner network with over 30 banks, meaning that for the first time, you literally can turn your banking operations at any of those institutions into software. This means faster payments, easy adoptions of new payment rails when they come out, like FedNow. It means automatic reconciliation and real-time financial data. This lets you move money at the speed of software, which, as we now know after the first half of 2023, being able to move money fast is very important.
Yes, we love Modern Treasury so much. The founders and really the whole team have become close friends of Ben and mine, really back to when they first got started. And this is a very cool full circle moment that just happened. We just emceed their first big conference here in San Francisco, Transfer, which happened at the beginning of June.
Yes, if your business involves money movement, be it a marketplace, fintech platform, real estate, lending, investing, or anyone who reconciles or moves money, go on over to moderntreasury.com/acquired and make sure that when you get in touch, you tell them that Ben and David sent you.